You enjoy this story. Let's begin. James Harrison stood by the poolside bar, admiring his handiwork. The custom lighting system he designed cast a warm, ethereal glow across the water's surface, transforming their backyard into an enchanted paradise for his daughter's sweet 16 celebration. Fairy lights wrapped around every tree branch, twinkling like stars brought down to earth. The pride of creation swelled in his chest as he watched teenagers dancing and laughing near the pool. "You've outdone yourself, Jim," David Chun, his old college roommate, remarked while sipping his bourbon. "The lighting design is incredible. Still keeping those architect hands busy, I see." James grinned, adjusting his navy blazer. "Nothing but the best for my little girl. You should have seen me last week, up on ladders, programming each individual light sequence. Vivi thought I was crazy, but—" He trailed off, noticing his wife's peculiar behavior near the house. Vivian Harrison, stunning in her red cocktail dress, kept glancing toward the back door, her perfectly manicured fingers fidgeting with her necklace. James tracked her movements, noting how she would take a few steps toward the teenagers, pretending to check on them, only to drift back toward the house like a ship caught in a current. "Speaking of Vivi," David said, following James's gaze, "she seems a bit distracted tonight." Before James could respond, he caught sight of his brother Mike emerging from the house. Mike, wearing a leather jacket despite the warm evening, carried himself with that perpetual air of casual confidence that had always irritated James. Vivian's eyes lit up for a fraction of a second before she schooled her features in a neutral hostility. "Great party, big brother," Mike called out, swaggering over to the bar. "Though I gotta say, all this—" He gestured vaguely at the elaborate decorations. "Seems a bit much. You always did have expensive taste." James's jaw tightened momentarily before he forced a smile. "Chloe deserves it. Speaking of expensive taste, how's that loan of yours coming along?" Mike's smile faltered slightly. "Working on it. Bar's doing well. Should have it sorted soon." "I'm sure you will," James replied, his tone carrying just enough edge to make Mike shift uncomfortably. The arrival of his sister Mary created a welcome interruption. She strode across the lawn in her characteristic power suit, briefcase still in hand, looking every bit the successful lawyer she was. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, giving James a quick hug. Court ran long. Her eyes narrowed as they landed on Vivian, who had drifted closer to Mike. "Vivian?" "Meredith," Vivian replied with artificial sweetness. "So glad you can make it. Though you might have changed out of your work clothes for your niece's party." Mary's smile turned predatory. "Some of us have real jobs, dear. We can't all spend our days showing empty houses to bored housewives." James stepped between them, ever the peacekeeper. "Mary, come see what I did with the pool lighting. You won't believe the programming system I developed." As he led his sister away, he caught the concerned look she gave him. "Jim, we need to talk. If this is about Vivi again, it's not what you think. There's something." Their conversation was cut short by the music fading out. James heard his mother's voice drifting from the kitchen window, pitched low, but clear in the momentary quiet. "Mary, for God's sake, keep your mouth shut about the DNA test results. He's finally happy after his depression. Do you want to destroy him by revealing his wife's been sleeping with his brother for 16 years? His mother's next words hit him like a physical blow. "But the birthday girl, she looks exactly like him." James felt the world around him slow to a crawl. The party continued in slow motion as his mind raced to process what he'd just heard. 16 years. Chloe was 16. His eyes found his daughter across the yard, laughing with her friends. He'd always attributed her features to Vivian's side of the family, but now he looked at Mike, really looked at him, and saw what he'd been blind to all these years. The same nose, the same eyes, the same laugh. His brother was sitting at the edge of the pool now, shoes off, pants rolled up, while Vivian stood nearby, pretending to supervise the teenagers but sneaking glances at him every few seconds. "Jim?" Mary's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay? You look pale." James realized he'd been gripping his glass so tightly his knuckles had turned white. With deliberate care, he relaxed his fingers and set the glass down on a nearby table. "I'm fine," he said, his voice perfectly steady. "Just remembered something about work." He turned to his sister, his face a mask of calm. "Would you mind keeping an eye on things? I need to make a quick phone call." Without waiting for her response, he walked into his home office, closed the door, and sat at his desk. His hands didn't shake as he opened his laptop. His breathing remained even as he pulled up his financial records. And his voice was completely normal when he called his bank to check on certain transactions he'd authorized for his brother over the years. The party continued outside, the sound of laughter and music muffled by the thick office walls. James sat in the growing darkness, documenting everything, his architect's mind already drafting blueprints for destruction. When he emerged an hour later, he was smiling. He joined in the cake cutting, saying "Happy birthday," and hugged his daughter. He even managed a convincing chuckle when Mike made a joke about James being an overprotective father. But inside, something had shifted. The James Harrison who walked into that office had died, and what emerged was something colder, harder, and infinitely more dangerous. As he watched his wife and brother performing their roles of loving spouse and doting uncle, he began formulating his revenge. The party wound down around midnight. Teenagers were collected by their parents. Decorations were left for the cleaning crew to handle in the morning, and the Harrison household slowly settled into silence. "That was the best party ever, Dad," Chloe exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "Everything was perfect. You're the greatest." James hugged her back, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, wondering how many other moments like this had been built on lies. "Only the best for you, sweetheart. Happy birthday." After Chloe went to bed, Vivian approached him in the kitchen. "You outdid yourself tonight, honey. Though I still think the lighting system was excessive." "Nothing's excessive when it comes to family," James replied, studying her face. "Don't you agree?" Something in his tone made her pause. "Of course," she said carefully. "Is everything okay? You seem different." James smiled, and for a fraction of a second, Vivian glimpsed something in his eyes that made her step back. But then he blinked, and he was once again her reliable, steady husband. "Just tired," he said, turning away to load the dishwasher. "It's been a long day." That night, as Vivian slept beside him, James lay awake, his mind working with mechanical precision. The architect in him knew that before you could build something new, you had to tear down what was there before. And he was going to tear down everything. The morning after the party dawned like any other in the Harrison household. James moved through his morning routine with mechanical precision, brewing coffee and preparing breakfast as Chloe bounced into the kitchen, still riding the high of her party. "Dad, have you seen the photos Sarah posted? The lighting looked amazing in all of them." She thrust her phone in his face, showing him Instagram pictures of laughing teenagers posed by the pool. James studied the images, noting how the custom lighting he designed cast everyone in their best light. Everyone looked happy, carefree, unaware of the lies that had built their world. "Beautiful shots, sweetheart. What are your plans for today?" "Going to Emma's house to work on our fashion portfolio. We're thinking of submitting it to that summer program at Parsons." Chloe's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Do you think I have a chance?" James watched her, seeing Mike's features in her excited expression, feeling a fresh wave of rage that he carefully suppressed. "Of course you do. You're talented, dedicated, and creative. Any program would be lucky to have you." After Chloe left, James waited until he heard Vivian's car pull out of the driveway. She hadn't said where she was going, just mumbled something about meeting a client. He wondered if that client had his brother's eyes and cocky smile. With purpose, James climbed to the attic. The space was well organized. He designed custom storage solutions himself, making it easy to locate the box labeled old electronics. Inside, wrapped in bubble wrap, lay Vivian's iPhone from 3 years ago. He remembered the day she'd replaced it. She'd been insistent on getting the latest model, claiming she needed it for work. When he'd offered to help transfer her data, she'd nearly panicked, insisting she'd handle it herself. He'd thought nothing of it at the time. James took the phone to his home office, connecting it to his computer. It powered on immediately. He'd always kept it charged, telling himself it was just good electronics maintenance. The passcode hadn't changed. Vivian used the same one for everything. Chloe's birthday. The messages started from 16 years ago, just before Chloe was born. James read them chronologically, his expression unchanging as years of betrayal unfolded before him. "Mike, Can't wait to see you tonight. Jim's working late again. Vivian. Yes, he's so predictable. Always at the office until 9. Mike, sometimes I feel bad watching him raise our daughter. Vivian, don't. He's happy playing daddy. Besides, he can afford to give her everything we couldn't. James created a secure folder on an encrypted hard drive, copying every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. He noted dates, times, patterns. The architect in him appreciated the structural integrity of their deception. They'd built it carefully over years, brick by brick. A new message thread caught his eye, from just before Vivian replaced the phone. Mike, Jim just approved another loan. Sucker doesn't even question it. Vivian, be careful. If he ever checks his credit score, Mike, he won't. Too trusting. That's why we love him, right? Winking face. Vivian, sometimes I think he suspects. He's been asking questions. Mike, he's not that smart, sis. Trust me. James logged into his banking portal, pulling up years of transactions. The pattern emerged quickly. Regular transfers to Mike's account, carefully disguised as business investments or loans. The total made him raise an eyebrow, over $200,000 in the past 5 years alone. He opened a new browser window, creating an email account under a false name. With careful consideration, he composed a message to Vivian's work email. Saw you at the party last night. You looked stunning in red. I've been admiring you from afar for too long. Would love to meet somewhere private. James selected a cheap motel on the outskirts of town as the meeting place, one he knew Mike frequented based on the bank statements showing regular charges there. He added the details to the email, then sent it. While waiting for a response, James called his father. Rich's calm voice answered on the second ring. Dad, got time for a visit? There's something I need to discuss. Of course, son. Everything all right? Just some tools I'd like to borrow. Working on a special project. There was a pause on the line. When Rich spoke again, his voice carried a note of concern. James, you sound different. What's really going on? I'll explain everything when I see you. Some things shouldn't be discussed over the phone. After hanging up, James checked his email. Vivian had responded within minutes. Who is this? How did you get my email? James smiled, typing his response. Just an admirer who's tired of watching from a distance. You deserve better than what you have. Let me prove it to you. He sent the message, then leaned back in his chair. The foundation was laid. Now it was time to start building. Rich Sterling's house hadn't changed in decades. The same well-maintained garden, the same perfectly organized garage, the same sense of quiet stability that James had always associated with his father. As he pulled into the driveway, James noted how his father was already waiting in the doorway, watching him with those observant eyes that had always seen too much. You look like hell, son, Rich said by way of greeting, leading James into his workshop. The space smelled of wood shavings and machine oil, comfortingly familiar. Thanks, Dad. Always knew I could count on your honesty. James ran his hand along the workbench, noting the pristine condition of the tools. Still keeping everything in perfect order, I see. Rich settled onto his workshop stool, studying his son. Cut the small talk, James. What's really going on? James met his father's gaze. What do you know about Mike's financial situation? The question hung in the air for a moment. Rich's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened slightly on his coffee mug. Why do you ask? Because I've spent the morning discovering that my brother has been stealing from me for years. James's voice remained steady. But that's not the worst part, is it, Dad? Rich set down his mug carefully. What are you implying? Chloe isn't mine. The words came out flat, emotionless. She's Mike's. Has been all along. 16 years of lies right under my nose. And you knew, didn't you? The color drained from Rich's face. James, son, you need to think carefully about what you're planning. Planning? James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm not planning anything, Dad. I'm just here to borrow some tools. Like I said, these tools? Rich gestured to his workbench. Or the ones you're already sharpening in your mind? James stood, walking to the wall of tools. His fingers traced over various implements, wrenches, hammers, precision instruments. You know what I learned as an architect, Dad? Every structure has weak points. Find them, and you can bring down anything. And what about Chloe? Rich's voice was quiet. Have you thought about how this will affect her? James's hand stilled on a particularly well-maintained set of precision tools. Everything I do is for her. She deserves to know the truth about who she is, about what kind of people raised her. James, I'd like to borrow these, James interrupted, selecting several tools. I'm working on a special project at home. Needs a delicate touch. Rich watched as his son carefully packed the tools into his bag. You're not the only one who can destroy things, son. Be careful you don't bring down everything around you. Too late for that, James replied, zipping up the bag. They already did the destroying. I'm just making sure everyone pays their fair share for the demolition. Leaving his father's house, James drove straight to Mary's law office. His sister's secretary tried to stop him, but one look at his expression made her step aside. Mary was on the phone when he entered, but she took one look at him and ended the call. Finally figured it out, did you? James set his phone on her desk, playing the recordings he'd made of their mother's conversation from the party. Mary listened without surprise, her expression hardening with each word. I need everything you can get me on Mike's finances, James said when the recording ended. Every loan, every credit card, every shady deal he's ever made. And I need to know my options regarding Vivian. Mary was already pulling up files on her computer. I've been building a case file for years, just waiting for you to wake up. She turned the screen toward him, showing spreadsheets of financial data. Mike's been doing more than just borrowing money from you. He's involved in some seriously questionable dealings. And Vivian? She's been helping him launder money through her real estate deals. James absorbed the information, his expression unchanging. Show me everything. For the next hour, Mary laid out years of evidence. Falsified loan documents, suspicious property transactions, tax irregularities. She pulled up surveillance photos showing Mike meeting with known criminals, bank statements revealing patterns of suspicious deposits, and real estate records showing Vivian's involvement in questionable property deals. Look at this, Mary pointed to a particular transaction. 3 months ago, Vivian sold a property well below market value to one of Mike's associates. 2 weeks later, that same associate transferred a large sum to an offshore account linked to Mike. How long have you been gathering this? James asked, studying the documents. Since I first suspected something was off about their relationship. Mary's voice hardened. I'm a lawyer, Jim. I notice patterns. The way they looked at each other, the secret meetings, the convenient explanations. I started digging, but I couldn't prove anything concrete about their affair. The financial stuff, though, that I could track. James nodded, his mind already formulating plans. I need copies of everything, and I need you to keep gathering more. Can you do that without alerting them? Already on it. Mary pulled out a USB drive. Everything's here, encrypted. But Jim. She waited until he met her eyes. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Mike's got connections with some dangerous people. So do I, James replied, pocketing the drive. Remember Officer Diaz? The one who helped us with that construction permit issue last year? Mary's eyes widened slightly. You're not thinking of... I'm thinking of everything, Mary. Every angle. Every possibility. Every weakness. James stood, straightening his jacket. That's what architects do. We analyze structures, find their weak points, and then... He smiled, a cold expression that made even Mary uncomfortable. We decide whether to reinforce them or tear them down. As James turned to leave, his phone buzzed. A response from Vivian to his fake admirer account. Intriguing offer. The motel sounds perfect. Tomorrow, 2 p.m.? One more thing, James said, showing Mary the message. I need surveillance equipment. The best you can get, untraceable. Mary studied the message, then looked up at her brother. You're going to destroy them, aren't you? No, James replied, his voice eerily calm. I'm going to let them destroy themselves. I'm just going to make sure I have front row seats to watch it happen. He left Mary's office, his steps measured and purposeful. The web was being woven, each strand carefully placed. Soon, very soon, the trap would be ready. And when it snapped shut, no one would escape. Not his unfaithful wife, not his treacherous brother, not anyone who had played a part in 16 years of deception. As James left Mary's office, his mind was already formulating the next steps. The pieces were falling into place. The evidence from the phone, the financial records, and his father's tools. Each element would serve its purpose. just as every beam and support in his architectural designs worked together to create something lasting. He checked his phone one last time, seeing Vivian's response to his fake account. The trap was almost ready. All that remained was to gather the final pieces of evidence, to document every lie, every betrayal, every moment of deception that had built the false foundation of his life. James drove home, his expression serene despite the storm raging within. He was no longer just an architect of buildings. He had become an architect of justice. And like any good architect, he knew that before you could build something true, you had to clear away what was false. The sun was setting as he pulled into his driveway, casting long shadows that seemed to point toward his house like accusing fingers. Inside, he knew, was a life built on lies. But not for much longer. Not for much longer at all. Room 237 of the Red Pine Motel reeked of cheap air freshener and broken dreams. James sat in his parked car, watching the entrance through tinted windows. His hands rested loosely on the steering wheel, steady and sure. The surveillance equipment Mary had procured was already in place. Tiny cameras and microphones hidden throughout the room, feeding directly to his laptop. His phone buzzed. A message from Vivian, stuck in traffic. Be there in 10. James allowed himself a small smile. She wasn't in traffic. He watched her spend the last 20 minutes circling the block, checking for familiar cars or faces. Paranoid, but not paranoid enough. At exactly 2:07 p.m., a silver Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Vivian emerged, wearing a red dress James had never seen before. She checked her reflection in the car window, adjusting her hair and makeup. Her phone was pressed to her ear. Through the surveillance feed, James heard her conversation clearly. I'm here now, Vivian said, her voice pitched low. No, I haven't gone in yet. What if it's a trap? Mike's voice crackled through the speaker. Baby, relax. Jim's too stupid to figure anything out. He's probably at work right now, designing another boring building. But what if? Look, we need this. The divorce settlement isn't enough. We need him completely destroyed, remember? Get some dirt on him, something we can use. Maybe this admirer knows something. Vivian laughed, a sound that once made James's heart skip, but now made his blood run cold. You're right. He's pretty stupid. Did I tell you what he did for Chloe's party? Spent weeks programming some fancy light show. As if that makes up for being such a bore. That's my girl. Now go work your magic. Call me after? Always. Love you. Love you too. Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. James watched Vivian end the call and walked toward room 237. She had a slight swing in her hips, practiced seduction in every step. He remembered the first time he saw her walk like that at a charity gala 12 years ago. He'd thought it was natural grace. Now he recognized it as performance. The door clicked open. Vivian hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The room was dim, with heavy curtains drawn across the windows. A bottle of expensive champagne, her favorite brand, sat in an ice bucket on the bedside table. Hello, she called out, her voice sultry. Your secret admirer? James waited, letting her nervousness build. Through the camera feed, he watched her drift around the room, touching surfaces, checking her reflection again. She poured herself a glass of champagne, took a long sip. Her phone buzzed. A message from the dummy account. You look beautiful in red. Make yourself comfortable. I'll be there soon. Vivian smiled, settling onto the edge of the bed. She took another sip of champagne, then called Mike again. He's not here yet, she said. But he left champagne. Expensive stuff, too. She laughed. Maybe we can squeeze some money out of him before this is over. Just be careful, Mike replied. Get what we need and get out. Remember, we're so close to getting everything we want. Once Jim's out of the picture, the house, the money, everything, Vivian finished. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I've been playing him for 16 years, haven't I? James had heard enough. He stepped out of his car, straightening his tie. Each step toward room 237 was measured, deliberate. He inserted his key card, obtained days ago, with a generous tip to the cleaning staff, and opened the door. Vivian jumped up, champagne sloshing over the rim of her glass. Who? Her eyes widened as recognition hit. James? What are you? How did you? Please, James said quietly, closing the door behind him. Don't stop on my account. You were just explaining how well you've been playing me for 16 years. The color drained from Vivian's face. She reached for her phone, but James was faster. He picked it up, ending the call to Mike. Looking for this? He held up the phone. Or maybe you'd prefer to see what's on this? He pulled out a USB drive. 16 years of text messages. Financial records. Phone logs. Did you really think I wouldn't keep backups of everything? James, I can explain. Can you? His voice remained soft, almost gentle. Can you explain why you and my brother decided to make me raise his child? Can you explain the loans, the theft, the lies? It's not what you think. James plugged the USB drive into his laptop, turning it to face her. Messages filled the screen, hundreds of them, spanning years. Vivian sank back onto the bed as she read, her hands trembling. How did you get these? Your old phone. The one you were so desperate to replace. The one you thought you'd wipe clean. James scrolled through the messages. You really should have been more careful with your passwords. Chloe's birthday? A bit obvious, don't you think? Tears began to streak Vivian's makeup. James, please. We can work this out. I'll tell you everything. Like how you and Mike have been planning to divorce me. How you've been stealing from me. How you've been laughing at me behind my back. James's voice never rose, but each word hit like a physical blow. Or maybe you'd like to explain this? He played the recording of her earlier conversation with Mike. Vivian's face crumpled as she heard their casual cruelty, their mockery, their plans laid bare. I've known everything for weeks, James continued. Every meeting, every call, every lie. Did you really think I was that stupid? That blind? What are you going to do? Vivian whispered. James smiled. And for the first time, Vivian saw the predator beneath the architect's polished exterior. I'm going to destroy everything you and Mike have built. Your reputation, your career, your freedom, all of it. And I'm going to do it so thoroughly, so completely, that you'll never recover. You can't. I already have. James stood, gathering his equipment. Oh, and Vivi, you might want to call a cab. I had your car towed. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. The champagne? It's the cheap stuff. I just put it in an expensive bottle. Rather fitting, don't you think? Beautiful packaging hiding worthless contents. James left Vivian sobbing in the motel room, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. As he drove away, his phone buzzed with a message from Mary, everything recorded. Starting the legal proceedings tomorrow. The architect and James appreciated the symmetry of it all. Vivian and Mike had spent years building their house of lies. Now he would show them what a true master of destruction could do. James's garage had become a war room. The space where he once restored classic cars was now filled with monitors, documents, and blueprints, not of buildings, but of destruction. 2 weeks had passed since the motel confrontation, and each day had been spent meticulously crafting the next phase of his plan. The workbench held his father's old tools, each one cleaned and sharpened to perfection. James ran his fingers over them, remembering Rich's words of caution. But caution was a luxury he could no longer afford, not when every day brought new revelations of betrayal. His phone rang. Mary's name flashed on the screen. Tell me you found something, James said by way of greeting. Oh, brother, have I ever? Mary's voice thrummed with satisfaction. Remember those property deals I was looking into? Turns out Mike wasn't just gambling with your money. He's been running a whole operation through Vivian's real estate business. James leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the monitors showing surveillance feeds from various locations. Mike's apartment, his bar, the places he met his associates. What kind of operation? Money laundering primarily. But there's more. Some of these properties, they're not just empty houses. They're being used for drug distribution. And guess who's been signing all the paperwork? Vivian. Exactly. She's been using her real estate license to facilitate everything. The best part? She's been sloppy. Left paper trails a mile wide. I've got bank records, property documents, everything we need. James nodded, though his sister couldn't see him. Send me everything. And Mary? Thank you. Don't thank me yet. There's something else you should know. Mike's got a new friend, guy named Frank Marino. Small-time criminal, does odd jobs. Been seeing them meet up at the bar after hours. I know, Frank, James said, pulling up a surveillance image on one of his monitors. He's been following me. Amateur hour. Keeps using the same car, same routes. Almost like he wants me to notice. Be careful, Jim. These people are exactly where I want them, James interrupted. How soon can you get those financial records to Officer Diaz? Already done. He's waiting for your signal. James smiled, cold and precise. Then it's time for the next phase. Meet me in my office in an hour. Bring everything you've got on Mike's gambling debts. After hanging up, James turned his attention to the blueprints spread across his workbench. They weren't for buildings. They were schematics of Mike's apartment building, showing every entrance, exit, and blind spot. Places where evidence could be planted, where cameras could be mounted, where a careful architect could build a case brick by bloody brick. His phone buzzed again. A text from Frank. We need to talk. Mike's getting nervous. Perfect. The pressure was working. James had spent weeks feeding information through carefully chosen channels, watching Mike's paranoia grow. Each leak, each whispered rumor, was another crack in the foundation of their confidence. James typed out a reply. Nervous people make mistakes. Keep watching. The door to the garage opened, and Chloe poked her head in. Dad, are you coming in for dinner? James quickly minimized the surveillance feeds. Of course, sweetheart. Just finishing up some work. You've been out here a lot lately, she observed, stepping into the garage. Her eyes, Mike's eyes, though she didn't know it, scanned the workspace curiously. What are you working on? Just a special project, James replied, standing to guide her back toward the house. Sometimes things need to be torn down before they can be rebuilt properly. Is this about Mom? Chloe asked suddenly. She keeps calling, but you never answer. James stopped, turning to face his daughter. The rage that constantly simmered beneath his surface threatened to boil over, but he kept his voice steady. Your mother and I are going through some changes. But I promise you, everything I'm doing is to protect you. From what? From lies, James said simply. Now, how about that dinner? Later that night, after Chloe had gone to bed, James returned to the garage. The monitors showed Mike at his bar, drinking heavily, arguing with Frank. The audio feed crackled with their raised voices. He knows something, Mike slurred. Jim's not stupid. He's playing with us? Then we need to play back, Frank replied. Let me handle him. I've got experience with guys like him. James watched Mike consider this, watched the desperation and fear play across his brother's face. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Soon, very soon, he would spring the trap that would bring their whole world crashing down. His phone buzzed. A message from Officer Diaz. Got the warrant. Ready when you are? James picked up one of his father's old tools. A precision hammer, perfectly balanced for detailed work. In his hands, it felt like justice waiting to fall. Mike Sterling's apartment was a monument to wasted potential. Empty bottles littered every surface. Papers were strewn across the floor, and the air reeked of stale cigarettes and desperation. Frank Marino stood by the window, watching his friend pace like a caged animal. You need to calm down, Frank said, lighting another cigarette. You're making yourself crazy. Mike whirled on him, eyes wild. Crazy? My brother's systematically destroying everything, and you're telling me to calm down? He grabbed a half-empty whiskey bottle, taking a long pull. He's got something planned. I can feel it. So what if he does? Frank blew smoke toward the ceiling. What's he going to do? He's an architect, not some mastermind. You don't know Jim, Mike spat. When we were kids, he once spent 6 months planning revenge on a bully. 6 months? The kid ended up changing schools. He ran his hands through his disheveled hair. And now, the way he looks at me like he's measuring me for a coffin. Frank's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression unchanging. Vivian's here? Moments later, Vivian burst into the apartment. Her designer clothes wrinkled, her makeup smeared. He knows everything, she announced without preamble. The motel. He recorded everything. He's got all our old messages, the financial records, everything. Mike grabbed her arms. What did you tell him? Nothing. But he didn't need me to tell him anything. He already knew. He's been planning this for weeks, maybe months. Planning what? Frank asked, watching them both with growing interest. Our destruction, Vivian said, sinking onto the couch. You should have seen him, Mike. He wasn't angry, wasn't yelling. He was cold, calculated, like he was describing plans for a building, not ruining our lives. Mike threw his bottle against the wall, glass shattering. We need to do something. Now. Like what? Vivian demanded. He's got everything. The loans, the property deals, She stopped, glancing at Frank. The drug operations? Frank finished. Yeah, I know all about those. Mike filled me in. He took another drag of his cigarette. Question is, what are you willing to do about it? Before either could respond, a pounding on the door made them all freeze. Officer Diaz's voice boomed through the wood. Police. We have a warrant. Mike's face went pale. What? How? The door burst open, and officers flooded the apartment. Diaz strode in, warrant in hand. Michael Sterling? We have a warrant to search these premises for illegal substances and evidence of drug trafficking. This is ridiculous, Mike stammered. I don't have anything. Check behind the wall panel in the bedroom, Diaz ordered his team. And the false bottom in the kitchen cabinets. Mike's eyes widened. How did you know about? Sir, we found something, an officer called from the bedroom. Moments later, they emerged with packages of white powder. That's not mine, Mike protested. I've never seen that before. This is a setup. Vivian backed toward the door, but another officer blocked her path. Ma'am, we'll need you to stay here. We have some questions about certain property transactions linked to this address. Frank watched it all unfold with an odd expression, almost like satisfaction. As Mike was being handcuffed, reading his rights, Frank slipped out his phone and sent a quick text. It's done. They took the bait perfectly. Across town, in his garage war room, James read the message with a cold smile. Frank had played his part perfectly. A double agent, paid well to keep Mike paranoid and sloppy. The drugs had been planted days ago, in locations only someone intimately familiar with the apartment would know about. His phone rang, Vivian's number. He let it go to voicemail, then listened as her desperate voice filled the speaker. James, please. You have to help him. Whatever you think we did, this is going too far. He's your brother. James typed out a response. Meet me at the bar. 1 hour. Come alone. He stood straightening his tie. Time to deliver the final blow, to show them exactly what betraying family truly meant. The bar was empty when Vivian arrived, her designer heels clicking against the floor. James sat at a corner table, a glass of whiskey untouched before him. Sit, he commanded softly. Vivian collapsed into the chair, her composure finally breaking. James, please. You have to help him. He's your brother. My brother? James's voice remained eerily calm. Was he my brother when he took loans in my name? When he slept with my wife? When he let me raise his daughter, believing she was mine? We never meant to get caught. James finished. That's the only thing you're sorry about, isn't it? Getting caught. Vivian's hands trembled as she reached for him. You don't understand. We were young. We made mistakes. 16 years of mistakes? James pulled his hand away. No, this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Every day, for 16 years, you both chose to lie to me, to steal from me, to mock me. What do you want? Vivian whispered. Money? The house? You can have it all. James laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. I already have everything. The evidence in Mike's apartment? I'll put it there. Frank? He works for me. Every move you've made in the past month, every call, every meeting, I orchestrated all of it. The color drained from Vivian's face as understanding dawned. You set us up? I gave you exactly what you deserved. James stood, dropping a USB drive on the table. This contains everything, the affair, the fraud, the money laundering. By morning, every news outlet in the city will have a copy. You can't. Think about Chloe. I'm thinking about Chloe. She deserves to know the truth about who her parents really are. James headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Vivian? Don't bother trying to access your accounts. They've all been frozen pending the investigation. He left her there, surrounded by the ruins of her carefully constructed life. In his car, James checked his phone. A message from Frank confirmed Mike's arrest was being processed. Another from Mary detailed the mounting evidence against both Mike and Vivian. Each piece was falling into place, just as he designed. The architect in him appreciated how each element supported the others. The surveillance, the planted evidence, the carefully orchestrated revelations. Like a building structure, remove one support and the whole thing would still stand. He'd built his revenge to last. As James drove home, he thought about the next phase of his plan. Mike and Vivian had spent 16 years constructing their web of lies. Now they would watch as he dismantled it, piece by precise piece, until nothing remained but the cold truth they'd tried so hard to hide. In his garage war room, James reviewed the surveillance feeds one last time. On the screens, he could see Mike being processed at the police station, Vivian still sitting shell-shocked in the bar. Their world was already beginning to crumble, but this was just the beginning. The foundation had been shaken. Now it was time to bring down the walls. The courthouse buzzed with tension as James sat perfectly still in the front row, watching Mary arrange documents on the prosecution table. His sister had spent weeks preparing for this moment, building an airtight case that would destroy both Vivian and Mike in one devastating blow. Vivian entered with her lawyer, her designer outfit unable to hide her haunted expression. She attempted to catch James's eye, but he stared straight ahead, his face an impassive mask. Behind him, several rows of spectators whispered, friends, family, and curious onlookers drawn by rumors of the scandalous case. All rise. The bailiff called as Judge Patricia Martinez entered the courtroom. As everyone settled back into their seats, Mary rose, her heels clicking against the floor. Your Honor, before we begin, I'd like to submit additional evidence regarding the financial misconduct perpetrated by the defendant and her co-conspirator, Michael Sterling. Vivian's lawyer jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. This is a divorce proceeding, not a criminal trial. The financial evidence is directly relevant to the division of assets, Mary countered smoothly. And it demonstrates a pattern of behavior that the court should consider when determining custody arrangements. Judge Martinez nodded. Proceed, Ms. Hayes. Mary activated a presentation screen, displaying bank statements and transfer records. Over the past 5 years, Mrs. Harrison and Mr. Sterling have systematically defrauded my client of over $200,000 through unauthorized loans and fraudulent business investments. The evidence mounted as Mary presented document after document. Vivian seemed to shrink in her chair as each new betrayal was exposed. The courtroom erupted in whispers as photographs appeared on screen. Mike and Vivian together at various locations, time-stamped over years. The bailiff had to call for order multiple times. Furthermore, Mary continued, her voice cutting through the chaos. We have evidence of Mrs. Harrison's long-term affair with Mr. Sterling, including recordings that demonstrate their intent to defraud my client. The motel room recording played through the courtroom speakers. Vivian's voice, cold and calculating, filled the space. Once we get the divorce settlement, we'll have everything. The house, the money, everything we've worked for. Mike's response drew gasps from the spectators. He's been such an idiot, raising my kid all these years. Almost feel bad for him. Almost. James remained motionless as the recording played, but his eyes never left Vivian's face, watching as she crumbled under the weight of her exposed lies. Your Honor, Mary pressed on, I'd like to call Officer Ray Diaz to testify about the criminal investigation currently underway. Officer Diaz took the stand, his testimony professional and damning. During our investigation of Mr. Sterling's apartment, we discovered significant quantities of illegal substances, along with evidence of a money laundering operation conducted through Mrs. Harrison's real estate business. Vivian's lawyer attempted to object again, but Judge Martinez shut him down. The court needs to understand the full scope of this situation to make an informed decision. When Vivian finally took the stand, her composed facade had cracked entirely. James, she pleaded, looking directly at him, you don't understand. We never meant to hurt you. Please address the court, Mrs. Harrison, Judge Martinez warned. I was unhappy, Vivian continued, her voice shaking. James was always working, always focused on his precious buildings. Mike was there for me. He understood me. And the financial fraud? Mary asked. Did my brother's absence justify stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from him? That wasn't. I didn't. Vivian's eyes darted around the courtroom. Mike needed the money. He said it was just temporary. Just like your marriage was temporary. Mary's voice cut like a blade. Just like your loyalty was temporary. Objection, Vivian's lawyer called out. Withdrawn, Mary said smoothly. Mrs. Harrison, can you explain these property transactions? She displayed a new set of documents. Properties sold well below market value to known criminal associates, then resold at massive profits weeks later. Vivian's face went pale. I don't remember those specific transactions. Really? Because we have recordings of you discussing these deals with Mr. Sterling. Would you like to hear them? Before Vivian could respond, her lawyer requested a brief recess. Judge Martinez granted it, but the damage was done. The spectators' whispers had grown to a steady murmur of condemnation. During the recess, Mary approached James. We've got them, she said quietly. The judge's face says it all. James nodded once, his expression unchanged. Finish it. When court resumed, Vivian's lawyer attempted damage control, painting her as a victim of Mike's manipulation. But Mary systematically destroyed each argument with documented evidence of Vivian's willing participation in the fraud. Finally, Judge Martinez delivered her ruling. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, this court grants Mr. Harrison's petition for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. Furthermore, given the criminal investigations currently underway, full custody of the minor child is awarded to Mr. Harrison. She continued, detailing how the marital assets would be divided, or rather, how Vivian would be left with nothing except her personal belongings and mounting legal bills. Additionally, the judge added, this court will be forwarding all evidence of financial misconduct to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. James stood as the judge left the courtroom, straightening his tie with steady hands. Behind him, Vivian had collapsed into sobs, but he didn't turn around. He had architected this moment perfectly. Each piece of evidence, another brick in the wall of justice he'd built to entomb her lies. As he walked out of the courtroom, Mary at his side, his phone buzzed with a message from Officer Diaz. Mike's plea deal fell through. He's facing maximum sentences on all charges. The first phase of his revenge was complete. Now it was time for the final act. After calling her 10th former friend and getting voicemail again, Vivian slumped into a bar stool at O'Malley's pub. Her parents had blocked her number weeks ago. Her sister had told her never to contact the family again. Even her real estate colleagues avoided her calls, afraid of being associated with her scandal. The bar where she now sat alone was a far cry from her usual haunts. Gone were the trendy cocktail lounges and upscale wine bars she'd frequented during her affair with Mike. This was a dingy neighborhood dive, perfect for someone trying to disappear. She stared at her phone, scrolling through dozens of unanswered messages to former friends. Each read receipt without a response was another reminder of how thoroughly James had destroyed her social standing. This seat taken? Vivian looked up, hope flickering briefly in her eyes before dying. Just another stranger. Free country, she muttered, turning back to her drink. The man sat down, ordering whiskey neat. His voice was familiar somehow, but Vivian was too lost in her misery to place it. Rough day? She laughed bitterly. Rough life. My husband, ex-husband, he took everything. Everything. She took another drink. You know what the worst part is? He planned it all. Every single thing that's happened. He orchestrated all of it. Tell me about it, the stranger said. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was desperation for someone to talk to. But Vivian found herself spilling everything. The affair, the fraud, the arrest, the trial. Each disaster tumbling out in a torrent of self-pity. I tried calling Mike in jail, she continued, but he won't even talk to me anymore. Says I ruined his life. She laughed again, harsh and broken. Me? James is the one who planted those drugs. James is the one who set him up. But does Mike believe that? No. He thinks I'm lying to save myself. Interesting theory, the stranger said, his voice changing slightly. About the drugs being planted? Vivian froze, really looking at the man for the first time. The wig and fake beard were good, but those eyes, she'd know those eyes anywhere. James? He removed the disguise with deliberate slowness, each movement precise and controlled. Hello, Vivi. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. How long have you been following me? Following you? No, Vivi. I've been leading you. Every step, every decision, every move you've made for the past 3 months. All of it was by my design. The motel. A trap. Frank. Working for me from the start. The drugs in Mike's apartment. Planted exactly where I knew Diaz would find them. Vivian's hands began to shake. Why? Why go to all this trouble? You could have just divorced me when you found out. Divorce? James's voice remained eerily calm. That would have been too easy. You and Mike spent 16 years lying to me, manipulating me, stealing from me. Did you really think I'd let that go with just a divorce? I'm sorry, she whispered. We never meant to get caught, James finished. That's the only thing you're sorry about. He pulled out his phone, showing her a series of messages. By the way, remember that anonymous tip that got Mike arrested? It came from your phone? What? No, I never. Check your sent messages. You'd be amazed what someone can do with the right technical skills. As far as Mike knows, you betrayed him to save yourself. Vivian's face crumpled as understanding dawned. That's why he won't talk to me. You made him think I turned on him. I didn't make anyone do anything, James said softly. I just created the circumstances and let your natural selfishness do the rest. You and Mike turned on each other the moment things got difficult. Just like you turned on me all those years ago. He stood, dropping some cash on the bar. Oh, and one more thing. Those properties you sold below market value? The ones that got you investigated for money laundering? I arranged those too. Set up fake buyers, created a paper trail leading right back to you and Mike. The DA is very interested in that case. You're a monster, Vivian whispered. No, James replied calmly. I'm an architect. I designed your destruction the same way I design my buildings, with precision, with purpose, and with perfect attention to detail. The only difference is this design was meant to collapse. He turned to leave, then paused. Goodbye, Vivi. Enjoy the life you've built for yourself. He walked out without looking back, leaving Vivian alone with the ruins of her life and the knowledge that every brick of her destruction had been laid by her own hands, guided by the architect she'd so grievously underestimated. 6 months after the trial, James surveyed his transformed home. The renovation had been therapeutic, tearing out every trace of Vivian's presence, redesigning spaces to reflect truth rather than lies. He'd stripped the house down to its bones and rebuilt it entirely, just as he'd done with his life. The master bedroom had become his private study, filled with architectural drawings and plans. Vivian's walk-in closet was now Chloe's sewing room. Every change was deliberate, each renovation a step toward healing. In the garden, admiring the structures he designed and built with his own hands. The old pool where he discovered the truth had been filled in, replaced by a series of interconnected koi ponds and meditation spaces. Each element was carefully planned, each detail executed with precision. Dad! Chloe called from the house. Come look at this. He found her in her studio, formerly Vivian's home office, surrounded by fashion sketches. Local magazine covers featuring her designs were pinned to the walls, each one a testament to her growing talent. What do you think? She asked, holding up her latest design. The magazine wants to do a full spread on young designers, and they want this as the centerpiece. James studied the sketch, noting how she'd incorporated architectural elements into the clothing design. It's beautiful, sweetheart. You're going to do amazing things. I learned from the best, she said, hugging him. You taught me that design isn't just about making things look good. It's about building something that lasts. The doorbell rang, and moments later, Rich and Mary joined them in the studio. They'd become regular fixtures in the house since everything had happened, healing old wounds and building stronger bonds. Still hard at work, I see, Rich said, examining Chloe's sketches. You got your father's eye for detail. Mary picked up a magazine featuring Chloe's work, and his determination, though hopefully not his tendency for elaborate revenge schemes. Aunt Mary, Chloe protested, but she was laughing. James watched his family interact, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The wounds of betrayal would always be there, but he'd built something stronger from the ruins, just as he'd always done with his buildings. A letter caught his eye on Chloe's desk, an invitation from a local charity asking for help designing and building homes for families in need. The old James might have ignored it, too focused on his own projects. But he'd learned something through all of this. The best designs weren't just about destruction, but about creating something meaningful from the debris. "What do you think about taking on a new project?" he asked Chloe, picking up the letter. "Something a little different from fashion?" She read the invitation, her face lighting up. "You mean like designing houses? Together? Why not? We could make it a family project." He looked at Rich and Mary. "What do you say? Ready to help build something good?" Rich smiled, that quiet, knowing smile that had guided James through his darkest moments. "Son, I think that's the best design you've come up with yet." As they gathered around Chloe's desk, beginning to sketch ideas for the charity project, James felt the last pieces of his old life falling away. He had destroyed those who betrayed him, yes, but more importantly, he had built something stronger in its place. Something real, something true. The architect in him appreciated the symmetry of it all. Every ending was just another beginning, every destruction an opportunity for creation. He had designed the perfect revenge, but in the end, he'd built something far more valuable, a future untainted by lies, surrounded by people who truly loved him. It was, he decided, his finest work yet. Epilogue. 10 years later. The Harrison Architectural Foundation's annual charity gala buzzed with energy as James Harrison took the stage. At 52, he carried himself with the same precise control that had defined his revenge a decade ago, though his dark hair now showed distinguished streaks of silver at the temples. 10 years ago, he began addressing the crowded ballroom. This foundation started with a simple idea. Everyone deserves a solid foundation to build their lives upon. Since then, we've constructed over 500 homes for families in need, each one designed to last generations. In the front row, 26-year-old Chloe Harrison beamed with pride. She'd inherited her father's eye for design, though she'd applied it differently. Her fashion line, Structural Beauty, had become known for incorporating architectural elements into clothing. Tonight, she wore one of her own creations, a black evening gown featuring geometric patterns inspired by her father's buildings. As James continued his speech, his sister Mary, now a prominent judge, exchanged knowing looks with their father Rich. The Harrison Architectural Foundation had been James's response to his own destruction of Vivian and Mike's lives, a way to balance the scales between justice and mercy. "My daughter recently asked me," James continued, "why I chose to focus on family homes after everything that happened. The answer is simple. When your foundation is destroyed, you have two choices. You can let the ruins bury you, or you can build something stronger in their place." The audience applauded, unaware of the deeper meaning behind his words. Only his family knew the full story of what had happened 10 years ago, though rumors still circulated in certain circles. After the speech, James mingled with donors and beneficiaries. A young reporter approached him, notepad in hand. "Mr. Harrison, there are rumors that Michael Sterling is being released from prison next month. Any comment?" James's expression remained neutral. No comment on personal matters. "I'd be happy to discuss the Foundation's upcoming projects." The reporter persisted. "Sources say your ex-wife Vivian Harrison, now going by her maiden name Walker, has been working as a waitress in Nevada. Quite a fall from her real estate days." "If you'll excuse me," James said politely, turning away. He didn't need the reporter to tell him about Vivian's fate. He knew exactly where she was, not because he kept tabs on her, but because his revenge had been so complete that her downfall had become a cautionary tale in their social circles. After the evidence he and Mary had presented in court, Vivian had lost her real estate license. The money laundering charges had resulted in heavy fines, depleting what little savings she had left. Her attempts to rebuild her life in their city had failed as former friends and clients shunned her. She'd eventually fled west, where she now worked double shifts at a diner off the Vegas Strip. Mike had fared even worse. The drug charges, combined with the financial fraud evidence, had resulted in a 12-year sentence. His time in prison hadn't been easy. James's carefully planted evidence had led investigators to some of Mike's former criminal associates, who blamed him for their own arrests. Even after his impending release, he would remain on parole for years, unable to leave the state or work in any financial capacity. "Dad?" Chloe's voice pulled James from his thoughts. "The dean of the architecture school is here. He wants to discuss the scholarship program." James smiled at his daughter. She'd grown into a remarkable woman, stronger for knowing the truth about her biological father. When James had finally told her everything 6 years ago, she'd taken a DNA test to confirm it. Her response had been to legally change her middle name to Harrison, declaring that biology meant nothing compared to the father who had raised and protected her. Later that evening, James hosted a smaller gathering at his home. The renovation he'd done a decade ago had evolved over the years, each change reflecting his journey from revenge to redemption. The koi ponds in the garden had become a neighborhood attraction, and the workspace where he'd once plotted destruction now housed the Foundation's design studio. Rich, now in his mid-70s, but still sharp as ever, sat with Mary on the patio. "Remember when we thought your brother's revenge would consume him?" he asked her. Mary watched James, showing some of the Foundation's beneficiaries his latest designs. "He found a better way to channel it. Though I notice he still keeps that box of evidence in his safe." "Insurance," Rich nodded. James learned to forgive, but he never learned to trust blindly again. Inside, Officer Diaz, now Chief Diaz, was discussing the Foundation's work in troubled neighborhoods. He'd become a strong supporter after seeing how James's housing projects had helped reduce crime rates in areas where they built. "Your father," he told Chloe, "understands something most people don't. The best way to prevent people from destroying things is to give them something worth protecting." As the evening wound down, James found himself alone in his study. A text message lit up his phone, a contact in Nevada letting him know Vivian had tried to apply for a real estate license there under her maiden name. The application had been denied due to her past convictions. James deleted the message without response. He had no desire to punish her further. The life she'd built for herself was punishment enough. The same one for Mike. His brother's upcoming release from prison meant nothing to him now. The man who had betrayed him might as well be a stranger. A knock at the study door revealed Chloe. "The Richardson family is here," she said. "They want to thank you personally. Their daughter just got accepted to medical school. She says having a stable home these past 5 years made all the difference." James joined his daughter, walking downstairs to meet the family. This was his legacy now. Not the destruction he'd orchestrated, but the lives he'd helped rebuild. Every home the Foundation constructed was a monument to the truth he'd learned. The real strength of an architect lay not in his ability to destroy, but in his power to create something enduring from the rubble. The Foundation's motto, inscribed on every building they created, summed it up perfectly. From ruins rise. Around him, his true family gathered, Chloe, Mary, Rich, and all the people who had stood by him through the darkness. They had helped him transform his talent for calculated revenge into a gift for calculated compassion. The precision that had once served his destruction now served creation. 10 years ago, James Harrison had been an architect of vengeance, designing the perfect collapse of those who betrayed him. Now, he was an architect of hope, designing futures for families who needed them. Both roles required the same skills: attention to detail, careful planning, and an understanding of how to build something that would last. His phone buzzed again. Another message about Mike's upcoming release, this time from Mary. "Should we be concerned?" James typed a simple response: "No. That foundation crumbled long ago. We build on solid ground now." He slipped the phone away and joined his family, leaving thoughts of Vivian and Mike in the past where they belonged. They had chosen their path, building their lives on lies and betrayal. He had chosen to build something different, something true, something lasting, something worthy of the legacy he would one day leave behind. The architect had finally created his masterpiece, and it wasn't the destruction of his enemies, but the construction of a life they could never touch. That was the ultimate revenge, not just surviving their betrayal, but thriving despite it. As he watched Chloe showing the Richardson family her latest designs for the Foundation's homes, James felt the last pieces of his old anger falling away. He had built something stronger than revenge, more lasting than hatred. He had built a future, And unlike the foundation Vivian and Mike had tried to build on lies, this one would stand forever. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.